Welcome, everyone, to the Entertainment Buffet podcast. This is the mini episode number 5. And guys, we have some new episodes coming for you, at least one currently recorded. Luckily, we are able to continue to record those safely via Zoom with the COVID spikes happening. I'm recording this on December 23rd of 2021. Tried to get a mini out to you before, but was unable to just because, honestly, I did record one, but I was not happy with it. I thought I had very low energy and would not have been fun to listen to, so I decided to do it again for you guys. Also, if you're watching on the video, I have my snazzy new shirt from Target, very, very fancy. Before I jump into what I've been watching, what I've been reading, what I've been playing, and so forth, I'm going to bring up the sponsor for Entertainment Buffet. That is Zenni Optical. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, the video version, I am wearing a pair of one of my new Zenni Optical glasses. I got these for about, I think, with shipping, $50, maybe $45. Very cheap, guys. The reason why Zenni Optical makes glasses so cheap is because Luxottica is a monopoly that owns way too many brands, way too many stores. Therefore, they upcharge everything and they convince us all that glasses are just supposed to be expensive when honestly they are not. So yeah, please check out. There's a link in the description below. You can order some Zenni, and that will support Entertainment Buffet in the process. We would really appreciate that. Another free way to support Entertainment Buffet is watch our YouTube. We have tons of content on YouTube, from the Entertainment Buffet podcast to we are partnered with a number of other podcasts out there just by watching on YouTube. We get some ad money from Google. Google's got plenty of money to go around, so go ahead, support us that way. It's another free way to do so. We do have some live shows coming, hopefully early 2022. At the moment, we have Bruised and Bad Movies coming on January 20th, February 13th, and March 13th. However, we're going to see what safety and numbers and social distancing protocols, like what everything's going to look at like in the new year. But enough with that. Let's go ahead and jump into what I've been watching. It's been about a month since my last check-in, and I've been watching some stuff. So first off, in movies, what have I been watching? I've watched, in early December, I watched The Family Stone. It's kind of this like dysfunctional comedy, sort of romantic movie with Diane Keaton, Sarah Jessica Parker, Luke Wilson, Rachel McAdams, just a big ensemble cast, Claire Danes, among others. I thought it was actually surprisingly progressive for something in the early 2000s, which is surprising. Especially, it wasn't amazing how they handled like the gay stuff or race related stuff. However, I think for the time it was handled pretty well. I was just happy that they didn't have all white characters, all straight characters, but they had some other lesser represented groups in that big budget Hollywood movie. I thought it was fun in the sense that I didn't know where things were going and some of the lines here and there. But I also understand why it's kind of one of those movies that have just kind of faded into, the distance that is time in movies, especially Christmas movies. But yeah, another dysfunctional family movie I watched. I've been doing a lot of research because I'm working on co-writing a dysfunctional family sort of Christmas movie script. I watched This Is Where I Leave You with Jason Bateman, Tina Fey, and Adam Driver, among others. This one I had a lot more fun with because I feel like I saw either most of it or some of it years ago, and I remember it being not necessarily a downer, but I don't know. I wasn't quite loving what I was seeing, but this time around, I don't know what it is, but I was having a lot more fun. It's a movie where the family loses the father and they have to sit Shiva, which apparently is a Jewish tradition where you have to sit for 7 days and grieve and so forth. And obviously there's a lot of tension between the family, and thus being stuck in the same place for 7 days. Interesting premise. I had a lot of fun with it. The cast, I think the cast worked really well, especially the characters who were siblings, because I think there's a lot of movies where it just feels like, oh, you just feel like that actor with that actor. But like these actors actually, I don't know, with the writing and the chemistry, they actually felt like siblings. So this is where I leave you. I do recommend to check out. A 90s movie that is considered a classic to some that I saw for the first time ever on Netflix was Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. That's right, Kevin Costner as Robin Hood, with Morgan Freeman, Christian Slater, and the late, great, amazing Alan Rickman as the villain. This movie I'd never seen before, but like now that I've seen it, I totally get why there are so many other jokes in Robin Hood Men in Tights by Mel Brooks. I had mainly seen that movie and like the Disney animated Fox Robin Hood. So watching this, it's like, oh, that's where Mel Brooks was pulling so many of these jokes. Yeah, it's fine. I think the action is pretty decent, especially for a 90s movie. I just think that the direction and cinematography I was not a fan of. Like they would do these kind of like weird angle close-ups, and things would just people would be very melodramatic to where I'm like, what is the tone? Are we supposed to have a fun action movie, or do you want to be like a drama that's like, oh, the king, there's a conspiracy, like there's just a bit much going on there. It was at least entertaining in some parts. I do think the biggest gripe for me is way too goddamn long. All right, this movie is like 2 hours and 25 minutes. Could have easily shaved 15 to 20 minutes just from little, honestly, take out an action sequence or two and it wouldn't have been a problem. Like there was a lot of, it was like every few minutes they were like action. Also, there's this random section where like, oh, what are we going to do? So-and-so's giving birth and Morgan Freeman has to step in, but he's a savage. What is he going to do? Like it just... They were trying to juggle way too many things, and yeah, I just think you could have easily shoved away 25 minutes and you would not have missed anything as far as the actual plot goes. But I don't know. Some of you probably grew up watching Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, or maybe love it. Tell me what you think, because this is someone who I grew up in the 90s, never saw this movie. Now I'm seeing it at almost age 30. So maybe I'm just, I don't know, seeing it through a 2021 lens instead of, the 90s when it came out. A few other movies that I watched that I'm going to go more in depth on a future episode of the podcast. I am going on a journey for the Fast and the Furious franchise. I acquired a 9-pack DVD combo of the franchise, which I will just say I did not purchase. I acquired, as I'll put it. It just is a franchise that I only ever saw the first one, and just to give you a little glimpse on how long it's been since I saw the first one I rented at Blockbuster in 2001. So that is just a little indication on how long ago it was since I saw the first one, and I never saw any of the other 2 through 9. But I wanted to go on this journey with some friends because, frankly, they all look like bad movies. I obviously run a show called Brews and Bad Movies. I love bad action movies, so I'm going on a journey watching them in order. And I know that there's apparently wonky timeline things. They like maneuvered things around just to keep a character alive, but then fake out and then bring him back again. I don't know. I know a lot about this franchise for someone who's only seen some of the movies, but I now at this point have seen The Fast and the Furious, Too Fast, Too Furious, and The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift. I think quality is pretty much in the order I just said them. The first one is not great, not good in my eyes. It is a early 2000s movie with a lot of like, oh, I'm a man, and oh, you got this cool car, like it just, I don't know, toxic masculinity running wild in this movie to me. And I just think that me and my friends kept saying, how much more fun would it have been if Vin Diesel and Paul Walker's characters like were the love interests? How much better would it have been if the twist at the end is that they fuck? I'm just saying something different, besides everyone being all macho and talking about their big, cool cars, which I'm sorry, guys. If you have a car that's like fucking like lime green with like orange flames and like an engine that's sticking out the front of the car, like you're going to get pulled over on the daily. Like, I'm sorry. Like, it's one thing to like, oh, we're going to go race at like 2 a.m. at whatever. But like, you're going to get pulled over all the time. That's neither here or there. Too Fast and Furious was pretty awful. Only thing about that was like, hey, they brought in Tyrese Gibson. Tokyo Drift there was a lot of drift. If you ever thought that the movie was not going to have enough drift, then you are wrong, because there is so much goddamn drift. I'll talk more about these movies later, though, when I watch 4 through 9. What else did I watch? I rewatched on Disney Plus Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. And yeah, still fun. I still think that it gets really bonkers later on. And like, sure, I'm glad that they tried to go weird with it, but it also... Watching it with my partner, who she did not see it in theaters, there was even a part where she paused it and she's like, wait, what is going on? So they went after the pendants for this, and then what is this? Why is this? And I was just like, yeah, now that I'm looking at it again, there's a lot of things going on here that it seems more complicated than it needs to be. I just want more action sequences like the train thing. I don't necessarily need... fucking dragons and whatnot, but another more indie style movie I saw was ACOD, Adult Children of Divorce. Surprisingly star-studded cast. Like, this had Jane Lynch, it had good old Catherine O'Hara, it had Amy Poehler for a bit, it had Adam Scott. So with Adam Scott from Parks and Rec and a Party Down fame, it was a movie that, like, I'm surprised more people weren't talking about. Like, I'm not saying it deserved to be up for awards or, it's one of the next best comedy, but it did actually feel like something that I think a lot of people could take something from. As someone who is divorced myself, I personally have parents who have been together for almost 40 years. I have some friends who they have parents who are on multiple divorces. So it's an interesting topic. I think it's done in a fun way with actors that are, some of the comedy greats working right now. So ACOD, I think it's worth checking out. I believe it's on Prime for free, potentially. Speaking of something else, is also on Prime for free is Being the Ricardos, written and directed by one of my favorite writers out there, Aaron Sorkin. If you're wondering what he did, he's famous for The West Wing. He was also nominated for things such as The Social Network. I think he made one of the best films of all time, A Few Good Men. He also wrote Moneyball, the Steve Jobs movie, the one with Michael Fassbender, not the one with Ashton Kutcher. He wrote Molly's Game. He wrote and directed that one. He also wrote and directed the Netflix movie The Trial of Chicago 7, one of my favorite this last year. Check that out on Netflix. So it is one of his, I think, only third movie directing. And Being the Ricardos is about Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball. And I think this movie is going to bug a lot of people because when you think of a biopic, you think it's going to be like a straight, like, oh, this is true, it's a retelling, it's so-and-so doing a great impression and they look like the person. But, like, that's not what Aaron Sorkin does with biopics. Like, please see Steve Jobs with Michael Fassbender. See Moneyball. See Social Network if you haven't. The way he usually talks about it is, I like to use real people. I read books about them, and he does a lot of research and he finds out about them. And then he just uses them in sort of fictional adaptations of real things. But I know a huge controversy with this movie is people were not happy with the casting choice of Nicole Kidman as Lucille Ball. I understand she doesn't look like it, but, like, also we're not seeing Lucy from I Love Lucy. Like, we see little clips of it, but this is really about the behind the scenes. This takes place during a production week, also with a lot of flashbacks, flash forwards. This is all the behind the scenes stuff, much like West Wing was, or Sports Night, or Newsroom, all of his TV shows he loves, behind the scenes of the actual thing. I think there's some great performances. I think there's some great lines. I just, unfortunately, when it comes to Sorkin's work, this has got to be one of his least good movies. And I'm saying that as someone who is a huge Aaron Sorkin fan, who has seen pretty much everything he's written and or directed. It's just, you look at Trial of Chicago 7 and it's like, oh yeah, he is great with a courtroom drama. A Few Good Men, one of the best courtroom movies, if not movies of all time. Trial of Chicago 7 had a lot of snappy dialogue, great characters, great interactions. This one, I didn't know what it was going for. Like, it was a drama, but it's so weird because Sorkin, sort of like Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, his one TV show that only lasted a season, Being the Ricardos is a drama with people who were known for comedy. So it's this weird thing that, like, if this was just something that was about two actors who were together also show running a show and like this is behind the scenes, that's one thing. But because I Love Lucy, like, we all grew up watching that. I grew up watching that, even though it was decades old. Like, I loved watching it on syndication with my family. So, and like, I used to say coming home, is Lucy, I'm home, you know, like, even though I wasn't really saying it to anyone, it's just how I used to enter the room when I returned from grade school. And I just think that when you take such an iconic person and TV character and try to do a dramatic adaptation of it, it feels off. So Being the Ricardos, I think, is a good movie. I just don't think it's a great movie. I don't think it's a bad movie by any means. I just think it's very middle of the road. I enjoyed watching it because there's some great Sorkin dialogue, some great performances. I'm really interested to see what Sorkin does next. I hope if he does something like this again, he understands that if you're going to do comedy, do comedy. If you're going to do drama, do drama. I'm someone who's a big proponent of doing both. And I'm not saying he can't do both, because most of his content, he does both. I'm just saying, if you're going to take the subject of someone who is so synonymous with comedy, considered a comedy icon, but you do it dramatically, that's where it feels wrong. That's where, like, if you look at that TV movie of the Three Stooges, where Michael Chiklis was Curly, and so forth, like, that felt weird because we love the Stooges, have just been dying of laughter for them for generations, and then to see such sad, dramatic retellings of it, it was weird. And so that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying it has to be one or the other. I'm not saying you can't do both, because I'm someone who loves to do both. I'm just saying that's like taking an Oscar-winning serious thing, you know, and then trying to do a spoof of it. It feels weird. Hopefully that makes sense. But Being the Ricardos, I do think, is worth seeing. What have I been watching in the TV world? We finished our rewatch of Game of Thrones. That's one I think I got to do an entire podcast about it on my just of how I think season 7 and 8 do have a lot of flaws, but there's actually a lot of good in there. And I think we only fixate, much like with, you know, people who love to hate on Last Jedi, who I think are incorrect. People love to fixate on only the bad, and they just completely dismiss and forget the good. I think in season 7 and 8, there's actually a lot of good things. It was just not executed well because the showrunners, I'm sorry, I'm not a fan of you guys. You had this, one of the most watched shows on television, which the most beloved franchises. You had all the money from HBO in the world, yet you guys just wanted to jump ship to do something else. I'm sorry. Like, as someone who wants to be a paid writer and wants the opportunity for things that they write to be how they earn a living and then get to be seen by millions of people, get over yourselves. Finish the show, go out on a high note, and then you'll be beloved and can do whatever you want. Don't shit the bed like you did, because now you lost Star Wars. You have a really a deal that Netflix is really regretting right now, and HBO's not really going to want to work with you anymore. But anyway, whole podcast on that later. I I also watched the pilot of Money Heist. I just got to say, I am interested as someone who is a huge fan of heists, and also interested how they're going to stretch a heist into a series instead of just a singular movie or, movie franchise. Only saw the pilot, but I'm in, and I want to watch that. I will warn you guys, like, it is something you either need to do English dubs or you need to do subtitles. Either way, it's worth watching. What have I been reading? Well, what have I been reading? As you guys know, I've been dabbling into a lot of comic books. If you're watching the video, you can see behind me that series I just finished and going to do a whole podcast on is Saga. Saga is by Brian K. Vaughan, art by Fiona Staples. This is a series that has been on hiatus since 2018, apparently. There's 54 issues that are available, and in January 2022, issue 55 is coming out, and apparently the first 55 issues are the first half of the story. So Brian K. Vaughan thinks that it's going to be 108 issues. Very, very interested to see where this series goes. I have to say, if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings, of Game of Thrones, of Star Wars, like anything fantasy sci-fi, I think you'll like Saga, because Saga has action. It has great character moments. It's a family piece. And by family, I don't mean family friendly. It is very much something that'd be on HBO, like hard R. I just mean it has a lot of family dynamics and family conflict. I think that it covers so many topics. Like, one thing that I personally appreciated is it feels like they're using aliens to make commentary on race and classism, and they even have a character that they dabble with trans. They represent trans through a character that is not human, but I think a lot of people in the trans community can relate to. And it was something that I was like, wow, this is such a small little section here, but I love how they're handling it, because they're doing it, one, respectfully, two, they're giving it acknowledgement, because it is something that I think a lot of people go through, and three, it just is something that could have easily been offensive, and they did not make it offensively. They could have made a joke. I'm glad they did not. Just Saga covers so many things. And the twists, oh my God, the gut twists, they literally feel like just an uppercut to the stomach. And there's times where I was reading and would just say out loud, oh shit. As if I was watching a television show. I really, really hope that they don't adapt this into a TV show or a movie, because I want people to read and support comics. As someone who is currently going to be self-producing some comics, I understand. But yeah, I also just want more people to read and check out Saga. I'm going to go very, very in-depth conversation on this with comedian and awesome person, Sandy Lee. So be on the lookout for that podcast episode. She's actually rereading issues 1 through 54, and we're going to be talking about that before the second half of this comic starts. What else have I been reading? I picked up a couple first trade paperbacks of 3 different series, because I wanted to see what's another series I can jump into. I read Chew, I read Saga, I read Y the Last Man. I did read The Old Guard, Tales Through Time, which is not the 3rd volume of The Old Guard. It is actually sort of I don't want to say a prequel, but like essentially these are characters that have been living for thousands, if not hundreds of years, and it's a way for them to have a bunch of one-off stories over time, but not have to do with like the main storyline. That's another one that I read, but the 3 first volumes that I read of series, I tried The Manhattan Projects and East of West, both by Jonathan Hickman. Those are ones that I did not quite latch onto. If you want to follow me on Twitter at Brandon Prosek, I do little posts about it. I call it a hashtag Comics Corner. The reason why neither of these stories I really latched onto is because neither of them have a clear protagonist. and they don't really have someone to follow along the story with. It's sort of like we're watching this world from an outside, and also there's a lot of villains in both these, which is not a bad thing. I totally understand why some people would be into these series, especially because Jonathan Hickman does a really good job of creating other worlds. East of West takes place in like a distant future in which the world was divvied up a totally different way. Instead of the Civil War ending in the 1860s, it didn't end until 1908 after like a bomb dropped and basically 7 parties divided up the country and parts of the world that way. But we follow the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, 3 of which are over here, and then Death is over here in his own story. And it just, yeah, I couldn't latch on to anyone because there was no clear protagonist, and I think that's something that I guess I really need in a series, because I wasn't really hooked. As far as the Manhattan Projects, picture this is sort of like like it takes place in America around World War II, but while people are working on the Manhattan Project, like Oppenheimer and Einstein and so forth, not just the atomic bomb, but it sort of like merges with like Fringe and X-Files, where like there's aliens and different dimensions, and yeah, it just is a story that I was like, wow, I think this could be a lot of fun. But for me, also, no clear protagonist and no clear person that I wanted to root for. There's a lot of evil people, villains, or just asshole characters that I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'm just in a dark place in my life right now and I just don't want that. But it's like, if I'm going to want that, I want it like, I don't know, outweighed by something. The third book of number 1 that I checked out was The Lazarus. This is by Greg Rucka, who also wrote The Old Guard, which is adapted to the Netflix movie with Charlize Theron. The Lazarus was another kind of other world where it's almost like the Hunger Games meets The Old Guard. It's got a badass female lead, much like The Old Guard. But I also was struggling because it's dark. And it's fucked up, and also it feels like it has a very, very slow progression. Like, I see where the story could be going, but it's just really trudging along, and like I don't know. I feel like if you're gonna do volumes where you have 5 issues, it's like Chu, I think, did a wonderful job, in Saga. Where there would have story arcs within those, 5-6 issue trade paperbacks, but also the longer story. The Lazarus, it just was like snail's pace, and I'm almost done with book 2, and it seems to be continuing that snail's pace. I may give it another chance or 2 in book 3 or 4 just because I rented them from the library already, but honestly, at the moment, it's not hooking me as much as I'd like it to. But also, I did start with pretty awesome series like Chu, Saga, Why the Last Man. So I started at the top. Now I'm working my way down, unfortunately. But those are some other things that I have read. I've also just been continuing to play Rocket League. I've not jumped into Uncharted 4 yet. That is something I'm hoping to do soon. But yeah, guys, that is what I've been watching. That is what I've been playing. That is what I've been reading. What have you guys been jumping into? Some of us may be going in quarantine for the next 2 weeks, so I'd love to hear what you're reading, watching, or playing, especially if it's in the comic book realm, because I feel like, guys, there are so many graphic novels, comic series out there that have nothing to do with superheroes. So they have all kinds of genres. So if you think it's like, oh, I don't want to read Marvel, DC, that's fine. A lot of what I'm reading now are Image, Dark Horse, like indie comics that aren't the typical, like, don't get me wrong, I have some Spider-Man stories, I have some Batman stories, I have some X-Men. Like, I love Marvel, DC, big fan. But also, there's just a whole realm. It's like if you're only watching one genre of movies or TV. Like, there's so many genres. I get it if you're, say, a horror fan, but there's also action, there's romance, there's comedy. Like, there's so many other things. So that's what I'm always trying to say with the comic book things is I have plenty of recommendations for you, whether you want to read those type of superhero stories or you don't. There's probably a story out there for you. You may just not have heard of it. Please stay tuned on Entertainment Buffet because we have plenty of announcements coming. We found a new artist for Gold Slingers. Unfortunately, we had something fall through with our other artists, but now I'm really excited. We could have the first issue of Gold Slingers out to you potentially March of 2022. We'll see with deadlines and so forth and getting things ready to print and sell, but also continuing trudging along with things for the Trippy Time Traveling Tale of Tripping, which actually you can see in play form here on the Entertainment Buffet YouTube channel if you're listening or if you wanted to hop over there to watch there. But yeah, that is a sort of like my version of like a Rick and Morty style meets My Dinner with Andre, I guess I'll say. But yeah, that's going to be a one-off comic book that is being worked on by another artist. One of these artists is in Brazil and the other one's in Italy. So we got some international artists out there working on these. I'm really excited for you guys to see. But yeah, this has been a mini. One of our next episodes to drop, I sit down with Kashan Bachelador and Nina Kern from White Collars Red Hands podcast, which you can find on the Entertainment Buffet YouTube channel. Yeah, guys, we talk all about white collar crime and what it was like for them now doing a year into the podcasting world. Yeah. This has been mini number 5. Maybe not as many as I'd like to say, but I am going to do a separate podcast specifically for Spider-Man No Way Home because there's just so much to say with that movie, guys. But yeah, I've been Brandon Prozak. Thank you guys so much for listening.